are live. Welcome back to 2 and 6 Sports, everyone. Haven't been here since March. Today I got Esri on here. He's a longtime Philadelphia Eagles fan. Never met him in real life. We met on like a Philadelphia Eagles or a sports fan group on Facebook or something like that. And the dude's jersey collection is insane. So how many jerseys do you have, dude?
Currently, I have around 58, I believe.
Whew. My gosh, I don't mean to interrupt here, but Cutwater, my God. If you guys want to sponsor me, these are the best the beverage for 2 and 6 Sports because they're strong.
My coworker actually enjoys those drinks.
They're good. They're really strong, but they're good. They're delicious. But dude, you got 58, you said, jerseys?
Yeah, I think my first jersey I got all the way back in like 2007, I believe. It was actually that yellow and blue Dawkins from the Frankfurt Yellow
That was
Jackets.
the first one you ever got? That's a good jersey.
Yeah, man.
What is that? So what's that uniform called? The yellow and there's a name for it, right?
Uh, Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. I think that's the name. Yeah, that's right.
The Yellow
It was
Jackets uniform. Most
because
people say they're horrible and hate them. I always liked watching the Eagles playing them.
facts, man. I will stand on that opinion. Like I know it's an unpopular opinion, but I love
Mhm.
those jerseys. And the way they played, Mike, they dropped 56 points on the Detroit Lions in 2007. Like
Oh
Kevin
yeah, I remember
Kurtz,
that.
he
I
had
remember that.
221 yards. Brian Westbrook had over 200 yards. The way they played, it was amazing. I never seen anything like that.
That was a great game. All right, so out of those 58 jerseys, which one do you have a favorite?
I would have to say my favorite would be Midnight Green Dawkins because that was the game I wore to my. I mean, I said game. That was the jersey I wore to my first game in 2020 when I went to Pittsburgh, and that game is very special to me because we had this receiver. His name was Travis Fulgham.
Mm.
Our receiving core
You
was
went to the
horrible
Fulgham
that year,
game? Nice.
and he and this dude Travis Fulgham in the middle of the season, he came out of nowhere and emerged as one of the greatest, as one of the best receivers in the league. And in that Steelers game, he had like 150 yards, I believe, and
Yeah,
a
he had like
touchdown.
a 4 game stretch for us where he was the best receiver in the league, right? Wasn't it like
He
a four
was, and
game
then
stretch or something?
for some reason, after our bye week when we played the Giants, once Alshon Jeffrey came back, Doug Peterson thought it was a brilliant idea to completely phase Fulgham out of the offense as if he wasn't completely torching the Baltimore Ravens, the Steelers, the Cowboys. Like, what was the
I heard some behind the scenes stuff with Travis Fulgham. I thought there was like some practice or I don't know what it was, whether it was character or a practice issue. I heard there was extra stuff to that.
I remember that too about the practice stuff. But the way they phased him out of the offense, it all started with that second Giants game. Once Alshon game came back, it's like they completely forgot about Travis Fulgham. I'm not sure if that's a reference to the practice habits that you just alluded to, but it was very bizarre. Very
Yeah.
bizarre, Mike.
That's wild. It's like one of the things as fans, we can only speculate. We'll never know. Just like we'll never know why we finished what 1-7 to the end of last year or 1-6, whatever it was.
That was
We'll never
horrible. Dude,
know.
what the how do you start the season 10-1 and then you go 1-6 in your final 7 games?
I don't I would I want to know what Jalen Hurts meant. So all right, we're gonna dive right into here to the first topic too, which happens to be Jalen Hurts. Excuse me, Jesus H. So that's gonna happen. A lot of burps. So I remember distinctly at a press conference, Jalen Hurts said we have a commitment issue, and someone said, "What do you mean by that?" And he's like, "Well, I don't have a dictionary on me." It's like, bro, what? So that was like what started the. I think that was right after Desai got fired, and Jalen said we have a commitment issue. I think that was directly correlated to that. I don't know why he would use the term commitment or like right after Desai got fired. What else would you need to be committed to? I don't know, but that's like one of those things we just never get to know. But Jalen Hurts in these press conferences lately, like there's something else going on, right? Because Jalen's a smart dude. He's a very smart dude. What's going on with these press conferences? There was that one with the commitment. Like he's had like a string of 3 or 4 things where he said where it's just like, what's going on here? Like, do you not believe in Nick? Do you not like the way the front office runs things? Like, what's happening? I feel like there's something that Jalen is thinking that he has not fully expressed to the public. Are you not thinking that?
I do believe that because of this meltdown that we had last year, that it. I think when we talk about commitment and issues, I think because you actually referred to how Sean Desai got canned before the Seahawks game, I think that these players were so fed up with this coaching staff, so fed up with these terrible plays that were being run week after week. I really think that they quit on this coaching staff because they just didn't have
Exactly.
confidence in the game plan.
Yeah, it seems that
And
it
and people
definitely
were
seems.
saying, yeah.
No, I was just agreeing with you. I remember seeing remember Jalen sitting next to Brian Johnson on the bench, and Brian Johnson was like showing him something on the tablet, and Jalen was like rolling his eyes or something like that and shaking his head. It was just very, very weird behavior.
Dude, Brian Johnson, I don't know what was going on with that man last year. This man, Mike, this man, Brian Johnson, was running wide receiver screens to Julio Jones on 3rd and 14 in Kansas City. This man was running quarterback draws on 1st and 20 against the Arizona Cardinals. Like, what is he thinking with some of these play calls?
So I think so that leads me to the thought as well here that I think Jalen is a top 5 quarterback, but I think that he had his weaknesses, and I think that Coach Sirianni and Brian Johnson were trying to hide those weaknesses as much as possible and just ran the most vanilla basic shit imaginable by just throwing the ball outside the numbers to Devonta Smith and AJ Brown over and over again. Because we all know Jalen, especially his first year, his first 2 years, liked to roll to his right. He didn't want to sit there in the pocket. He liked rolling out to his right, and he didn't really throw the
Constantly.
ball in the middle of the field. And now this year we're hearing, if last year, if you looked at the route trees, like if you looked at the fucking, it's like the graphic of like where Jalen's throws were going last year, they were all going outside the numbers, and he wasn't really throwing in the middle of the field.
No.
And our offense just looked terrible because of that. Like, it was just so bland, so vanilla. The routes were just so predictable. You know, this year we hear Jalen, the new offense is being installed. Kellen Moore's new offense. He's struggling in the spring. We hear, throwing a lot of, bad balls in the middle and whatnot, and struggling. We get to training camp now, and he's phenomenal. I think that Kellen, because we talked about earlier, Jalen, especially his first couple of years, just like to roll out to his right and throw outside the numbers. So I think Kellen Moore, I'm telling you right now, if I wasn't so convicted in Bitcoin right now, I'd be putting my money down for Jalen Hurts for MVP. I think that's a lock. He's come so
You
close
know,
with this trash Nick Sirianni offense. Kellen Moore is a quality offensive coordinator. I was saying that when I was watching him in Dallas, and Dallas was beating us back then. I was saying it already. I said I like Kellen Moore. I think this guy's good. I think he's a good mind.
you have a valid point because as much as we love to make fun of the Cowboys, it is a fact that when Kellen Moore was their offensive coordinator, they were statistically year after year one of the best offenses in the league. And to get back to what you were just saying about Jalen Hurts for MVP, that really isn't that crazy of a take because if you remember, he runs in that touchdown against the Buffalo Bills to win in overtime. He's the MVP front runner. He was MVP. In fact, Jalen Hurts last year, a lot of people are like trying to spread this narrative that Hurts had a bad year last year.
He was the
I,
MVP
I don't
frontrunner
think
until they
that's fair to
skidded.
say. I don't think it's fair to say he had a bad year because I will admit
Hmm.
he had high turnovers last year. I think he had around like 19 total turnovers, but he also had a career high in passing yards. We were winning games after being down double digits week after week. Like we were down double digits against the Bills, the Chiefs, Washington in one
He
game,
was
and
MVP
Hurts
favorite
was
when we were
willing
10
as
and 1.
like, dude, like he was the MVP front runner. He runs in
Mhm.
against Buffalo, like legit. He was the MVP favorite at that point in time. And then it all started with that 49ers game
Yep.
when Big Dom got ejected against Greenlaw. And then we
Yep.
weren't the same after that.
Yeah, we got killed by them and the Cowboys 2 weeks in a row, and then I think they just kind of crumbled under expectations, combined with the fact that they knew that the just the coaches were outmatched. You
It,
know,
it was horrible. Like you had Christian McCaffrey on the Manning cast. he was predicting our plays before we even ran them. Like that's how vanilla you were just talking about earlier. That's how vanilla this offense became in the second half of this season. Christian McCaffrey is calling these plays before we even run them.
To
It's
be
like they
fair
went
though,
back.
do you ever watch Birds 365? Like, do you ever watch Jacob Sports or anything?
Oh yeah, I watched them.
On Birds 365, John McMullen, he did say this too. He mentioned that I thought the same thing that you thought, and then I heard John McMullen say this, and it made me think about it a little bit more. And that's that Christian McCaffrey could probably do that for any team that he watched.
That's a fair assessment because
You
he
know what
is
I
like a
mean?
star NFL player.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, and he's a film guy, too. So it's just like he could probably do that with any team, most likely. Like I don't know. Do you remember when Tony Romo first started doing his announcing, the play-by-play calling, when he was actually really good before they told him to tone it down? Um, he would be calling plays before they would happen. Like his first season when Tony Romo was doing the play-by-play calls, he'd be like literally saying, "Oh, they're gonna do this," and they'd do it, and you'd be like, "Tony
Yep.
Romo is a great play-by-play caller."
Yep, 2017. That the year we won the Super Bowl. I remember that. And
Oh,
like
was it? That was his first year.
I couldn't stand Tony Romo on the field. Like I loved when we destroyed them on Thanksgiving that one
Oh yeah.
year. But as a broadcaster, the guy is very talented.
Fantastic. He's a great broadcaster.
Great
I
broadcaster.
don't understand why people hate on him. All right. So we talked a lot about Jalen. Let's get into Saquon. Saquon's the big signing this year, right? Saquon's huge. So we lose Jason Kelsey. We lose Fletcher Cox. Um, I think there one other guy that we lost that was a big guy.
Trying to think, was it well, I wouldn't really say Quez Watkins was a big guy,
Oh no,
but
Queasy Watkins. Ugh.
dude,
No,
that
no,
he
no.
dropped a pass in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Like,
Oh, I remember. I
it was very
remember
crucial.
very fondly. I think it was just so we lost Kelsey and we lose Cox, but we get Saquon Barkley. I think like that, like man, people say Saquon's no Christian McCaffrey, but I think he is, dude. I think he is.
And let's say something right now. This is something that's really pissing me off, Mike. So, if you remember his first few seasons in the league from 2018 to 2021, Saquon Barkley, he was very injury prone. And it
Mhm.
was fair to say that about him. Like he had trouble staying on the field. But if you look at these past two seasons, he's only missed like 7 out of like 52 games.
Yeah, not a lot.
Injuries injuries have not been an issue for him recently. So for people to say, "Oh, he's gonna play like 3 games for the Eagles," like what are you guys talking about?
Excuse me. Since he came back from tearing his ACL, I think in 2021, he's had a
Yeah,
great
against the
year.
Bears,
And he carried the Giants to the playoffs not this last year, but the year right before that. It was all him. And that offensive
2022.
line's trash. And they have no wide receivers, no quarterback threat. Everyone knows the ball's going to Saquon, and he still carried them to the playoffs.
He still did. Like if people were giving Daniel Jones all the credit, well, I guess not everybody, but people were. I feel like a lot of people were giving Daniel Jones way more credit than he deserved. Like you just mentioned, it was Saquon winning those games, like all those fourth quarter comebacks and game winning drives. That was Saquon.
Yeah,
And
the
like
year that
you just
resulted in
mentioned,
Daniel Jones's contract.
dude, I don't see how you could give that to a guy that has just one playoff win. And outside of one decent season in 2022, he's been pretty mediocre. He's been mediocre, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that statistic that said we were paying less to Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, and Saquon combined than Daniel Jones in one year? Can you believe that?
Yeah, Howie's a magician. Honestly, I can't believe it by now. I've watched Howie wheel and deal since he came back from the Chip Kelly banishment. He's been fantastic. He
Yeah,
has.
dude, after he was a man reborn after the Chip Kelly incident, man.
He really
But
was. Phoenix rising from the ashes.
that's right. But back to Saquon, like you mentioned earlier, he played with one of the worst offensive lines in the league, and he was still putting up numbers. So imagine what he's going to do with one of the top five offensive lines. I know that we lost Jason Kelsey, but I see no reason why this offensive line still shouldn't be within the top three. Because you still have Lane Johnson, you still have Landon Dickerson, you still have Jordan Mailata.
Yeah, I know the Lions probably have a better offensive line than we do. Outside of them, I don't know. I don't know many offensive lines that'd be better than ours. I don't know them too well, but I know the Lions I'd probably put them number one ahead of us.
I would say
Um,
that.
They have some beasts on the Lions. Sorry, this drink's already getting me. These cut waters are strong, dude. But yeah, so my thoughts with Saquon are like, so people will or say like, oh, he's not an elite player because he's not going to have elite numbers because of the Eagles' offense or whatnot. It's not about that. It's about the impact. So sure, Saquon's probably not going to have 2,000 all-purpose yards because we have all these other places the ball's going to go to. It's going to go to Devonta Smith. It's going to go to AJ Brown. It's going to go to Dallas Goedert. Those guys have to eat too. So
Yes.
Saquon's not going to have a career year, but I
No.
think the impact is going to be career. Like the moments that count and the actual percentage of effectiveness of Saquon is going to be his best year. Like I don't think statistically he'll have his best numbers, but I think he's going to come through in the biggest moments. I think Saquon is going to have the most meaningful year of his career this year, I think, without statistically breaking the chart. Like if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And another thing I wanted to point out about Saquon, he brings this extra piece of versatility in his tool set because if you watch Saquon Barkley, you'll notice that he's one of the best pass blocking backs in the league.
Oh, and that was something we really struggled with last year too. We're
Yes.
awful at that.
Awful at pass blocking. DeAndre Swift, I love DeAndre Swift, but he was not a good pass blocker, Mike.
DeAndre Swift is a 2A. If you're gonna have a DeAndre Swift as your back, I don't think he works as your main back. You know what I mean? I think yeah, if DeAndre Swift is in your backfield as a football team, I feel like you need to be committed to the running back position and have a thumper as well in front of him. Like DeAndre Swift is someone that you pair with like I don't know, an AJ Dillon or like a obviously you're not going to be able to afford like a Derrick Henry or a Saquon if you're still doing that, but I think you need a downhill runner to pair with Swift, someone who can pass protect and someone who can go do the goal line carries. Swift is, I think the injury prone thing on Swift was overrated. Like, I don't think he was as injury prone as people said that he
Yeah.
was, but he's not a big guy, like, and he show that in pass protection, show that in running A to B. Like, he had some big games, but it was because people were daring us to run. Like that game against the Vikings was against 6-man boxes, like like 7-man boxes.
Oh, I
It's
remember that. That was our home opener. Yep.
yeah, so it's just Swift is a really good back, but he's not a number one. Like his pass protection was trash. The fact that Kenny
Horrible.
Gainwell was our guy last year, like,
Horrible pass block. And
oh,
Swift, like you mentioned the Vikings game, the game after that, week 3 against the Buccaneers, he ran all over them too. I remember he hurdled over their safety. And it's just like it all comes back to like that versatility factor. Saquon Barkley, without a doubt, is a more complete back than DeAndre Swift. And I don't think that's even remotely arguable.
no, you could combine Kenny Gainwell and DeAndre Swift into one super back, and Saquon's still 10x better than what we had last year.
Still.
Yeah. It's I think that's going to really show up too because teams I don't care how delicate this league becomes. Once you teams know that you're just going to start throwing the ball and they don't have to respect you running the ball, it doesn't matter how good your receivers are. You need to have them at least somewhat. They need to be able to think about like, oh, I might have to tackle this running back. And cornerbacks, like I don't know how, like if you've ever played like competitive sports or whatnot. I'm a smaller guy. You don't want to get in front of big guys who are running full steam. Like,
No.
like
Ran right
so
over you.
yeah, so it's so important to be able to have a running back that can like the finesse stuff is nice to have as a number two, but you need somebody that cornerbacks are going to think twice about getting trucked by. Like you need that guy. And I don't care. I don't think anyone is going to win a Super Bowl if you don't have that guy. The Chiefs have had Isaiah Pacheco. That kid might be small, but you telling me any of those cornerbacks want to get in front of Isaiah Pacheco when he's running full steam?
Dude, he's an angry runner. That dude,
Yeah.
he runs with purpose, man. He was giving us issues in the Super Bowl.
And look who's in the
Like you
Super
say, he's
Bowl.
not a big,
Him and Christian McCaffrey. It's so important to have a running back. Like you don't need to have a top 5 running back, but you need to have a running back who's not afraid to like lay it down, you know?
And you know what else I really hope we do with the running game this year? If you remember 2019, Miles Sanders, his rookie season, we used him a lot as a pass catching back. He had like over 500 yards receiving.
Was that the
But
year that Carson missed him on that wheel route to the left and just overthrew a wide open? We were like on the 20-ish, and Carson Wentz just missed him. He was wide open on a wheel on the left side of the field that would have been a touchdown, and Carson
close.
overthrew him.
I do know exactly what that was, the Ravens game in 2020. I remember that. And but what I was talking about before, if you his rookie season 2019, he
Photographic
we
memory
really
you have.
we really used him as a receiving back. He had over 500 yards receiving, but ever since 2019, like we have not utilized running backs the same way as pass catchers. And I really, that's really disappointing because I think that adds extra layer of versatility to your offense.
How much of that do you think is coaching, though, and how much do you think is Jalen? All right, so we're going to move on from Saquon. We're going to move on to the Eagles' offense now as our overall topic. How much of that, the lack of checkdowns, is just the fact that Jalen doesn't like doing the checkdowns? Jalen would rather run or throw it deep downfield. Jalen likes throwing deep, you know?
And
That's
that
not
was
because
an
Nick.
issue. That was an issue. I'm glad you brought that up actually, because there were a lot of instances this year. Two particular games come to mind. When we were playing Washington at home, I believe we had a deficit. I can't remember how much we were trailing, but I think we were trailing by 4. And Jalen Hurts throws this deep pass to AJ Brown. And while it scored a touchdown, the problem was that we gave them so much time left on the clock that Washington went right down the field with Sam Howell. They score, and they send the game to overtime. Like you didn't have to throw that deep shot. All you had to do was keep running the ball, keep eating up the clock, and then you kick a field goal to win the game. And your defense couldn't stop a nosebleed. Like Sam Howell is carving you up like a Thanksgiving turkey.
Mhm.
Like mind
It's
you, like you did not have to throw that deep shot. You did score a touchdown, but the problem is that you gave Washington so much time left that they went right down the field and they sent the game to overtime and they tied
beautiful
it.
complementary football. They didn't do that.
No, they didn't. And then the Seahawks game, he threw 2 deep shots when they were completely unnecessary, and both of them
Oh, the
were,
last one was awful. The one that AJ
dude, that was
that they
horrendous, man.
improvised.
That I really think on that second one that they were trying to draw a pass interference call.
That's what Nick said. And then AJ said that he sounded like a fool and took blame for it. So, I mean, if that is really what happened, well, first of all, that is a very, if that was in anyone's mind, the plan that person needs to, if
They
it's
need to
Nick, I'm gonna be
go, dude.
fucking pissed because like hope is not a strategy. Hope
No,
is
it isn't.
it's
What
not a
kind of
strategy. And when you're throwing a deep ball, hoping that the ref throws a flag because you underthrew the ball and your receiver's coming back for it, it's it's obvious what you're trying to do. You're trying to get a foul. That
yes.
being so obvious about it will make the ref not throw the flag.
That game
Like
pissed me off big time. Like that Seahawks game was so bizarre because for some reason the Eagles have this thing of running the ball early in the game. I mean, running the ball and then sorry, I said it wrong. The Eagles have this thing of like not running the ball until the second half of the game. The Seahawks game was unique in that they started out running the ball well, but then they got away from it as the game went on. The when they
sounds
were
like Andy Reid.
that first interception to Julian Love, like you didn't need to do that. DeAndre Swift and Kenny Gainwell, they were trampling Seattle. You didn't have to throw that deep shot. And the second one that we were just talking about, you only needed like 12 yards to get him within field goal range.
I can't. No one can explain what the hell happened last year. We'll never know.
Dude,
But
the Eagles have had some bad collapses before. I remember like 2014, they were 8-3. Then they lost to the Cowboys on Sunday night. That was the game where Bradley Fletcher gave up like 3 touchdowns and does.
oh, he sucked, Bradley
He
Fletcher. I remember him. He was a bum.
horrible. He legit
Oh,
might be the single worst corner we've ever had. Like Bradley Fletcher, he was that bad.
I wish my roommate was here because I've known him for like 12 years, 13 years. We've been friends. and he knows he remembers that year because I would always be like fucking Bradley Fletcher. Like he'll
He's
remember it.
not.
He's a Patriots fan, but I guarantee he remembers the name Bradley Fletcher. That
And
guy
it's
sucked.
funny. You just mentioned how he was a Patriots fan. He went to the Patriots the
That's
following
right. He
season.
did go afterwards. He did, but he would
Yep.
know him regardless. I'll tell you that. All right. So this year is the offense. I think that last year is just totally behind us. I think if there was ever a team where it's just like last year's team is just a totally new team versus this team for being Eagles fans, that's this year for us. And it may not seem like that on the surface, but like if you really think about it, like offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, the addition of Saquon Barkley, the loss of Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox, the two cogs on our offensive defensive line, those are huge. Those were our leaders on both of our lines, who the Eagles build around. The Eagles build around the lines. So now
Yep.
Jordan Mailata is going to have to take over this massive leadership role. Landon Dickerson's going to have to take over this massive leadership role. Um, Cam Jurgens, he's going to have to fill in for Jason Kelsey. Jason Kelsey called all the protections. Like that's so that people don't even think about that. Jason Kelsey was amazing at that. And now Cam Jurgens, this guy's only been in the league a couple of years. He's going to take over that. Like
Missing him is gonna. We're really gonna miss Kelsey. Like, dude,
this is
the
a
stuff he
different
gave you.
team.
You remember how last year, like when we were running, like when we were about to run like the brotherly shove and stuff, he would have his hands on the ball, and then they would give us a penalty for being offsides. It's like, what are you guys doing? Like
that
basically, they
kid,
thought
that play
that,
frustrated me.
dude.
Anytime you see a camera angle down the line of scrimmage of a brotherly shove play, every fucking defensive lineman's offsides. every time they run that play, every defensive lineman's helmet is over the tip of the ball. I don't so I don't get it. I don't understand the way they ref that play.
Dude, especially in that Washington game, I saw that like 4 different times.
Yeah, it's just like well, you think the producer at least would be like, no, go to a different angle because that's so obvious. Like what?
It's such an easy issue to fix too. Like you said, it's so obvious. But yeah,
We're
the
gonna get that
interesting.
ref out there with that piece of paper folded in half. And you remember that guy who used the folded piece of paper to measure the first down marker?
I remember that. Yeah.
Oh man, that was incredible, huh? All right, so since we're on the topic of the offense, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and feel free to add your commentary while I do this. Here we go. So I got to give credit to. Can you see this or no?
I can see it.
All right. Let me see here. Let me make sure I'm actually doing this correctly. I want to make sure I'm actually sharing the way that I want to. What the hell's going on here?
Okay.
Is this what I wanted to do? I think this is what I wanted to do.
Oh, Johnny Wilson.
Yep. So we're gonna give credit here. Just Bombs Productions.
Shout out to Just Bonds Productions.
So Johnny Wilson, man, we don't. All right, Anaya Smith, we can write his ass off. When he was drafted and I was watching Anaya Smith highlights, I'm like, oh, okay, this kid looks good. He looks promising. Spring drops, fumbles, muff punts. Training camp, drop passes, muff punts. Anaya Smith stinks out loud, dude.
His
I
stock
thought
plummeted.
I thought he had a chance for our number 3 wide receiver role, but I think this kid, Johnny Wilson, man, this kid's gonna be something. I think
Dude, that size. I think it just said he's 6'7". Like that's gonna be hard to defend him, man.
number 14, bro. So it's and it's not even necessarily him with the ball in his hands. Like we've heard people talk about it this last week since the first preseason game. Johnny Wilson can block. So
Yes.
and if you think about it, we had that kid the year we went to the Super Bowl who was a great blocking wide receiver. What was his name? Nick Sirianni brought him over from the Colts.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. What's that guy? It wasn't Zacchaeus. That was the dude from Atlanta.
Yeah, Zacchaeus was in Atlanta from last year. I'm talking about the prior year.
Yeah, the Super Bowl year.
Yep, he
What was that
came over
guy's name?
from the Colts. He was our number three wide receiver.
God, what was that guy's name? Like Sirianni, he was his offensive coordinator before he came over to us. That's why he had that history with him.
Yep.
But I know exactly who you're talking about.
I can't think of the kid's name, but
He
he was
did.
a blocking wide receiver, and the block. I'm just, oh my god. Last year, if you I was screaming at my TV last year, watching us run wide receiver screens with fucking Devonta Smith as our lead blocker. What are
Yep,
you
against the
doing? Oh,
Cardinals. Against the Cardinals. Why are you using the skinniest dude on your team as
they
the
did that all
blocker?
year. All year they did that. Why? Why?
Dude, these plays, like I don't understand what their rationale was for running some of these plays, like screens on 3rd and 14, quarterback draws on 1st and 20. Like, what are we doing?
I hate the wide receiver screen, but we're gonna run it, and we're this all of the think about all the things that Kellen Moore does. Think about all those past games that we'd watch when Kellen Moore was coaching. I didn't watch many games coached by the when he was in the Chargers, honestly, from last year. I didn't watch many of those. But I remember watching the Cowboys and thinking this play calling is phenomenal. There's a rhythm to it. Like there's a pacing to it. There's a reason behind the plays that he's called. So I just feel like Johnny Wilson, this kid in that offense, he's not going to obviously have a bunch. He won't even come close to 1,000 yards. But I think this kid's going to show up big time in a lot of big areas. I think his size and his athleticism. I think people are people. I think someone said that people are slightly overrating. I think it was Darius Slay on a podcast said that people are slightly overrating Johnny Wilson's athleticism. But 6'7", he's the tallest wide receiver in the league. And if he can run with fluidity, his problem in college was his hands. He'd have a lot of drops allegedly. If he can shore that up in the league, he doesn't
He's gonna be
have
an
to be
issue.
Tyreek Hill fast. You don't need to create that much separation when you're 6'7". You don't need like if you can block, if you can be one of the better blocking receivers in the league and also be able to catch some fades in the end zone and run some slants in those tough areas in the red zone. I'm telling you, dude, Johnny Wilson's going to be a fan favorite by the time we're in the playoffs. I'm calling it right now. I think Johnny Wilson's going to be a fan favorite.
Like you said, you don't need to have this Tyreek Hill type speed. Like Harold Carmichael wasn't crazy fast. Like Harold Carmichael back in the 70s, like dude was huge. Like you couldn't guard him.
You don't even need to go that far back. Think about our Super Bowl year when we won the Super Bowl. Alshon Jeffrey.
Oh, big body was yo.
He didn't get any separation.
No.
And Johnny Wilson's the same type of receiver, but he's a little skinnier. He could put on some more muscles. Jeffries is definitely stronger than he was. It looks like, but same play style. I could picture Johnny Wilson doing the same type of things that Alshon Jeffrey was doing for that Super Bowl year.
Yeah, possession receiver, like big body guy.
Mm-hmm.
Get those contestable balls.
Yeah, and I'm not imagining in my head like any sort of Anquan Bolden type of possession physicality. Like Johnny he's tall, but you don't want him running over the middle taking massive blows from a middle linebacker. But there are ways that you can utilize that height to your advantage. Hey, maybe we have Britton Covey between the 20s as our number 3 wide receiver. And maybe we bring in Johnny Wilson as our number 3 wide receiver once we hit the red zone. Like different packages. I just think right now with Kellen Moore and his creativity, to be able to have someone like Johnny Wilson like on the roster at your disposal to be able to I guarantee Kellen Moore is thinking of ways to use Johnny Wilson in this offense with Jalen Hurts, Saquon, and AJ Brown on the field all at the same time. There's no way that Kellen Moore is not excited to incorporate this kid into the offense.
Now, Mike, I have a question for you. So, how do you feel about some of the criticism towards Kellen Moore that he doesn't run the ball enough? How do you feel about that?
I mean, I think if you watch any sort of like Eagles, like I watch like Jacob Sports, so I watched Birds 365. I watched that fat fuck Dan Cilio, who I fucking hate. Guy's a prick. I watch him sometimes though. Guy's a fucking prick though. He just he uses negativity to try and create engagement in his chat, so that way like it's just so aggravating because he's intentionally an antagonist.
He's a baiter. He likes to bait people.
100%. 100%. And it works too though, because look how riled up I am about it. So it makes me want to comment on there, and that helps the engagement, and it whatnot. It's good for him. But if you watch like any Jacob Sports, if you watch like Josh Davis, what's the Thomas Mott and Josh Davis, there are two channels. I forget what their names are. But they also cover the Eagles. They're like they're more optimistic leaning. But if you watch any sort of Eagles influencers coverage, all that kind of good stuff, what the hell was the question?
Basically, I wanted to know your thoughts on people who say that Kellen Moore doesn't run the ball enough.
Oh,
Personally,
okay,
I
yeah,
think
yeah, yeah.
that's a little overblown, but what do you think?
I agree. So like going off of what I said, if you keep track of all that kind of good stuff, you've definitely heard over the summer that rumor go around. But a lot of those platforms have also kind of dispelled that rumor. Like Kellen Moore does run the ball and he does incorporate his running backs. It's not DeMarco Murray, Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard both had a really great year under Kellen Moore. Um, Kellen Moore last year, like there's some people use last year's stats with the Chargers. Like I said, I didn't watch much of it, but I do know that when you lose your two starting wide receivers, it's going to be difficult to run the offense, right? And he also had an injured star quarterback as well. So I don't think there's much to those rumors. I think that Saquon's gonna, like we talked about earlier, Saquon's gonna have a fantastic year under Kellen Moore, I think.
Like you said, you were saying this earlier, he's not gonna have like 1,500 yards or anything like that, but the impact on the field, I really like how you added that part about the impact. That's gonna be far greater than anything that we've seen previously from him with the Giants.
He'll be able to close out games. That's the big thing from last year. We couldn't close out games running the ball. Like we had to throw the ball last year to close out games. I don't like I said earlier, I don't care how soft this league gets. You're always going to have to run the ball. You have to. Unless it turns into flag football, until that day comes, you need to run the ball. It's massively important. You have to run the ball. It, having a physical guy like Quadzilla, that guy.
I
Dude.
like
I'm
that.
telling you, Saquon's gonna have a year. Not statistically, but in big moments, he'll be getting big first downs and big scores. Saquon's gonna have himself a career year as far as the impact that he makes on the team. Um, but I've been absolutely steamrolling you because I feel like I'm hitting that level for going from buzz to drunk a little bit. These cut waters are delicious, but they're also very strong. But we only have 15 minutes left until we play the Patriots in our second preseason game. So I'm gonna just start trying to roll through a little bit quicker here. We're gonna go on to the defense. What are your thoughts on the defense this year? Do you have high expectations this year? Do you think we can win a Super Bowl with this defense? What are your thoughts?
So to be honest, the defense, I do feel better about the secondary than I did last year because I like Ricks, Ringo, Cooper, DeJean that we just picked up, and Quinyon Mitchell. I do believe those are promising pieces. But what really concerns me about the defense is actually the front line. I'm really worried about this pass rush after losing Fletcher Cox and Hassan Reddick. Like if you remember the second half of last year, like they could not get sacks.
Mhm.
It's like I think they had like the worst sack percentage on third down. It's like they just could not get pressure at the tail end of last year. And after losing Reddick and losing Fletcher Cox to retirement, I'm wondering, like, you did pick up Huff. You got Bryce Huff from the New York Jets, but will him, Milton Williams, the other guys I'm trying, Brandon Graham's still here. Milton Williams, who else? Josh Sweat. Like I
Jalen
like
Carter.
Jalen Carter, that's right. Yep. Jordan Davis,
Nolan Smith.
Nolan Smith. And I'm wondering, like, can these guys really get that heat that we need them to get? Because Jalen Carter, if you remember, like the first 6 games of the season, he looked almost like an all-pro. He looked like defensive
Beast
rookie of
mode.
the year.
He was
And then,
Reggie White mode those first 6 games.
yeah, but then like he ran into a wall in the middle of the season, and it wasn't a bad year for him, but there was a drop off after those first 6 games. That's my single biggest worry about the defense, that pass rush.
I'll tell you what, I think Vic Fangio in his disciplinarian, old school type of style of coaching on the defense, I think having Vic instead of Sean Desai, think about just close your eyes and imagine Vic Fangio coaching you versus Sean Desai coaching you. I don't think it's going to be a problem this year. I
He's a
don't think
proven
those things are going to be
commodity.
an issue.
Vic Fangio is a proven commodity. He has several decades experience of defense. He's always been a very sound and capable defensive mind. And where you hear about Sean Desai, players were saying he was stubborn, how he wouldn't want to adjust his philosophy. Like like I was saying earlier about how the players gave up on the coaching staff, in my opinion. Like Sean Desai, he's an example of that because he sounds very toxic from what I'm hearing from some of our players and former players, you know?
I couldn't comment too much on that, but I just my confidence level in Vic Fangio, I think Vic's a fantastic defensive coordinator. Maybe not, he's maybe not a head coach, you know? Some people in this world, they'll think like because someone moved up from a defensive coordinator to a head coach, or because you moved up to a new position and you weren't that great at it, it means that you're somehow a failure. That's not true at all.
It's
In
not
life,
true.
we have we have our lane. You hear stay in your lane or something. Like sometimes it's misused, obviously, but there's things that people are really good at. Vic Fangio's a really good defensive coordinator. That's
You know what's
different
good?
from being a head coach. Yeah, and when he went to Denver, he failed as a head coach. It's different than being a defensive coordinator. When he was with the Bears, their defense was incredible.
2018, I remember that. They even shut down the Los Angeles Rams that year,
They
who
were
were
an incredible
disappointing.
defense. Did Khalil Mack just do that by himself? No. That was
No,
the scheme. You got to put those guys in the right spots. You can have an all-star team, as we watched last year on offense, but if the coaches are not putting those dudes in the right position to make like to be successful, you finish 1-7.
I agreed, Mike. Certain people are better coordinators than head coaches.
Jim
A famous
Schwartz.
example. A famous example. Look at Josh McDaniels. He was a very capable offensive coordinator for the Patriots. He
Yeah.
goes to Denver. He's terrible. He sucks. Then he gets a second chance at being a head coach with the Raiders. He sucked there too. Like
Well,
the guy is not a great head coach, but you can't disrespect his production as an offensive coordinator. The
nope.
same, I feel like the same applies to Vic Fangio to a less extreme extent. Like he wasn't successful in Denver, but I wouldn't say he was an outright failure over there. But he's clearly best as a defensive coordinator, like you were saying.
I agree. I agree entirely. Um, so all right, so we got 10 minutes to wrap this up really quick. I definitely would love to have you on again for sure.
Yeah,
Your
me too.
Eagles
That'd be sick.
knowledge is beyond anyone else for sure. Like we're gonna have to have an Eagles centric. This is flown by, so we're gonna have to have an Eagles centric episode. Obviously we're already Eagles centric, but I'm talking about like a blast from the past episode where we utilize that photographic memory of yours. Maybe we'll do some like trivia or something where
I'd
you
love
have
to
to
say
like
that.
recall like the exact game, something along those lines. Um, but I think the defense is, you're concerned about the defense in the pass rush this year. I think the talent that we picked up, along with the progression from Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, I think those two dudes' conditioning is better than it was last year. I think they worked on that. I think that is something that they focused on this offseason.
I agree
I'm
with
not
you.
as worried about the defense, I think, as possibly you are. I think the defense is going to be really good, honestly. I think we're going to have a top 15 defense.
Hey, you know what? Like I don't see how you could get any worse than last year.
You can't.
You can't.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not concerned about the secondary actually, because I think like we were talking about Vic Fangio, the pass rush is what's giving me a little bit cause for concern. But I'm gonna stay hopeful, you know.
I think they'll be okay. And if you're concerned about pass rush too, Nakobe Dean might suck in coverage, but he's a great blitzer. Nakobe Dean is fantastic going downhill.
Yes, the Dolphins game. He was wrecking the Dolphins when we used him downhill.
He is. He's fucking shit in coverage. I'll admit it. Nakobe Dean's not good going backwards. But if you send that kid going forwards, man, I really think this defense has enough young talent that it's Super Bowl worthy. You don't need a top 5 defense to win a Super Bowl. Give me a top 15 defense, which I absolutely think this will be. I think we're around 11-12 this year. Next year, dude, I think next year we have a top 5 defense, I think. Not this year. I think around this year we're around 11-12. I think next year we're a top 5 defense.
I like your optimism. Like now, you were talking about what do you see the Eagles' potential record being this year, Mike?
Yep. So we're going to move on to our season predictions. This is our last topic before we get into the random question of the week. We're going to go through this a little bit quickly. But my season predictions this year, I got to remember we got 17 games. That always throws me off.
Yep, since 2021. Yep.
Yep. I think the Eagles finish 13-4.
That's
I'll tell you
around what I
what.
was seeing.
I think those last 2 games that we lose, I think we may lose 2 of our last 3 games potentially. I think those are because we're sitting people. I think
You
that the
know,
Eagles have a fantastic year. I think we come out hot. I think people think the game in Green Bay is a trap game and we could lose to Green Bay or it's going to be tough or whatnot. I think we fucking smoke Green Bay. That's my hot take of this podcast. I think we go down to Brazil week 1 and fucking smoke them. I think we
oh,
win
we're gonna
like
make shredded cheese out of Green Bay.
I think we win like 43-17 week 1 against Green Bay in Brazil. I really do. I think people are sleeping on it. People think that Green Bay is going to play us tough that game. I think we fucking kill them. And I think we roll that into the later half of the year. And like I said, my season prediction is 13-4. I think we have a fantastic year. We lose most of our games towards the end because we're sitting guys. And honestly, I think this could be a Super Bowl year for us. My only concern, like you said, maybe the pass rush and maybe our linebacker play coverage in the middle of the field. But
Yes.
outside of that, I predict 13-4 in a Super Bowl win.
I'm around the same, honestly. I see us going either 12-5 or 13-4. The game that really concerns me, we have to go down to Baltimore for the Ravens. I think they could give us issues. I think if we were to lose, I say we would lose to the Ravens. We would lose to the Cowboys once because as much as I want to say we sweep Dallas, we have not swept them since 2011. So being rational, like what my head tells me, I do believe we'll lose one game to them probably
I
in
agree. I
Dallas.
think we split with Dallas.
And the Eagles tend to have this one game that they randomly lose at home that they have no business losing. Last year it was the Cardinals. This year, I feel like that could possibly be Cleveland because the Browns pass rush is fearsome, man.
We have a
Miles
top end
Garrett,
defense.
JOK, like I want no piece of that defense. They have arguably the best defense in the league.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
another game, the Rams. I think the Rams could give us issue too because those offensive weapons they have over there, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nakua, and what was that running back's name? Um,
David Akers. Not David Akers. Cam Akers. David Akers was our kicker.
I love David, dude. I've never seen a kicker tackle like David Akers. That man was laying out people like a linebacker.
That was back in the day.
Yep, I miss
All right.
him.
So if you had to lock it in, lock it in. Let's go. 13-4.
13-4, and I do believe we will win the Super Bowl this year.
Nice, nice. We get 2 Super Bowl predictions from 2 Eagles fans here.
I hope that I hope we get a rematch with the Chiefs. I hope we do.
I honestly I do as well. Not for revenge factor, just because I think they're going to be the best team. I want to beat Patrick Mahomes. Like I think he's the best quarterback in the league. I want to beat him. Jalen outplayed him in the Super Bowl.
Yes, he
He
did.
played better than Patrick Mahomes did. We don't lose that game if our dumbass cornerbacks don't get fooled by those ridiculous motions.
They ran
Those
those twice on the opposite sides of the field. Like,
those
dude,
those were two touchdowns, but
Sky
on
Moore,
ridiculous plays.
Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney. I'll never forget it, man. And
Those
then
were ridiculous plays. We don't lose the Super Bowl if it's not for that ridiculous communication. Like, it's not that hard. It
they,
really wasn't. They did the same thing on this other side of the field. Like,
yes, they did on both sides of the end zone.
I
And
could
then
I was so mad at how easy that was to stop. It's
it
not
was so,
that
there was nobody within like 10 yards of them, dude. It was so frustrating. And to this day, Mike,
heartbreaking.
I believe if James Bradbury didn't get called for holding on that 3rd and 8 with like a
Yeah,
minute 37, I believe the Chiefs kick a field goal and we either send the game into overtime by tying with a field goal of our own, or we score a touchdown to win. I
I
firmly
agree. We
believe
probably do. We probably do. But it's those two uh double move motion fake touchdowns on the left and right side of the field that killed it for me. Those
that. Yes.
those were so easy to stop, and they blew it. They blew that Super Bowl on defense.
It's
And
bad enough
honestly,
that you it's
I'm
bad
not
enough
worried
that
about that this year. I'm
it's
not worried
bad
about
enough
that.
it's bad enough that you let it happen one time, but then you let it happen again on the other side of the field.
Hmm.
We
But
we
this,
had a 10-point lead at halftime in that game. It
I'm
was
not worried about it this
24 to
year, dude. We got
14.
Vic Fangio, we got Slay, we got Quinyon Mitchell, Isaiah Rogers, Keely Ringo, Cooper DeJean. I think we got some ballers. I think the addition of CJGJ is massive.
Massive. We needed him last
Massive.
year.
We needed the attitude last year. We didn't have that attitude. CJGJ trash talking and having the attitude and energy that he has, it raises the level of everybody else on that defense.
The
You're
three
not going to be
big
able to relax when he's on your team. He
the
won't
three
let you.
big the three big problems we suffered on defense last year. You lost Javon Hargrave. James Bradbury went from being an all-pro to being one of the worst corners in the league.
Rashberry.
And then you lost CJ Gardner Johnson. This man the year we went to the Super Bowl 2022. This man lacerated his kidney against the Packers. He missed like 6 games, and he was still tied for the league lead in interceptions.
And he came back and played more.
And he came back. I don't think he missed any playoff games. He missed 6 games, and he still had the league lead, a tie for interceptions. Like the dude's a baller. We needed him last year.
All right. So we got our season predictions in. All right, we're on to the random question of the week. Real fast. We got 1 minute left
Gotcha, man.
before this Eagles game comes on, because I know we both want to see that. You're gonna fight 100. You're gonna fight 100 horse size, no, 100 duck-sized horses, or one horse-sized duck to the death.
Honestly, I'd actually take my chance with the horse-sized duck. I'd take my chance with the horse. I know that sounds kind of crazy because of the size difference, but if you're fighting a bunch of horses that are like 100 horses the size of ducks, like they have the numerical advantage over you. They could jump you. They could overrun you. So
So
I'd
what are you
rather take
imagining?
my
They like assemble like some sort of Transformers thing?
yeah,
Or
like
like
I'd legit rather take my chance with the horse-sized duck. At least that's a 1v1 fight.
1v1. That's a good thought to it. 1v1. But like honestly, the 1v1 also kind of worries me. So like I'm thinking like, all right, the 100 duck-sized horses, that's just a fatigue factor, right? How long can you kick for? You know? Like
Yeah, right.
yeah.
Oh man, these
Yeah.
duck-sized
At
horses.
first it's pretty easy, right? But can you keep kicking at horse number 70?
You're talking 100 like duck-sized horses. Like you
All
said,
right. So, I mean, to be fair, we could probably take out one per kick, right? Can you kick 100 times? And how many minutes would it take? I guess minutes, seconds, and/or minutes for those horse ducks to overtake you. Could you kick 100 times? What's the ratio there? What's your endurance with kicking? Is your hip flexor gonna wear out? Like,
see, like you said, that's gonna take up a lot of energy. Like that's like you said, I prefer the horse-sized duck because that's 1v1, and because I feel like you'd be using a lot of energy taking on 100 duck-sized horses, man.
I gotta be honest with you though. I just for the sheer intimidation factor, I'm going with 100 duck-sized horses. I'm going with that one just because I would be one horse-sized duck is fucking that'd be fucking terrifying. I'd be scared. I might be too scared to fight it. That might be my issue. I'm not scared of 100 duck-sized horses. Bring them on. They got little stick legs. They'll have little tiny stick legs. I'll break all their legs. Like,
I can't remember if this is correct, but is it true that a horse, if it breaks its leg, it'll die?
oh, that's so sad. I hope not. I think I've heard that too, where it like lays down, or if it like
Yeah.
lays down for too long or some shit like that.
Yeah, I
Oh,
feel like I remember hearing something like that.
I think I get it too. I don't know. Esri, it was great having you on. Good answer to the random question of the week too. Very, very sensical. I like it. We'll definitely have to have you on again tonight, or not tonight, some other time. The Eagles are playing the Patriots tonight. We're gonna rush off so that way we can catch that game. Um, Appreciate you for coming on, my friend. Any last thoughts? Anything you'd like to say with your last fucking, let's say, 10 seconds?
Well, I'd like to say the New England Patriots can suck lemons.
Yeah, let's go. Fuck the Patriots. Let's go,
Yeah,
Eagles.
man. Those dirtball things.